There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a 2022 Dodge Challenger RT. Looking good. I think this car, as with most of the American muscle cars, is styled in a reasonably attractive way. Not the most beautiful car, but not ugly by any means. And one thing I've always found amusing is how they like to keep this little yellow plastic delivery piece on the front splitter. I thought that was only on the higher trims, but I guess even on these lower trims, it's now the case. This is the GT, which is the second lowest trim. This car goes for about $35,000 new MSRP. And what I'm curious to see is how does it compare to the other vehicles in this segment, namely the Ford Mustang and the Chevy Camaro. And today we're going to explore that. Now, I have a good amount of experience behind the wheel of both the Mustang and Camaro in the lower trim levels, and this is the equivalent from Dodge. First impressions as soon as I get into this car is, goodness gracious, this is a goddamn land yacht through and through. Oh yeah, power! Oh yeah, you can feel that half. Now this is the V6, the 3.6 liter naturally aspirated V6, pushing out 305 horsepower and 268 pound-feet of torque. The car, that seems like a decent amount of power until you consider the power to weight ratio, because this is one hell of a chunky monkey, boys. This is nearly 4,000 pounds, 3,900 pounds and some change. And the rear-wheel drive configuration, it does also come in all-wheel drive. And yeah, it does not hide its weight well at all. It very much feels 4,000 pounds. In fact, it may even feel heavier than that, because the way this car drives, I'm gonna put this into manual mode. It is surprisingly harsh over bumps, and yet it doesn't feel all that sporty in terms of body control. It still has a good amount of sway, nosedive, etc. with the G-forces laterally, or forward and backwards, acceleration, deceleration. And the chassis itself doesn't feel that stiff either. So if you look at the actual chassis dynamics across those three main muscle cars, the Chevy Camaro definitely at the top, Ford Mustang trailing in second place, and way down low is this Challenger. This is not sporty at all. I think it looks attractive somewhat. I mean, looks are subjective. It's definitely not the most beautiful car, but it looks reasonable from the outside. But when you get inside this car, you realize it has no interest in being a sports car. It is trying to be a GT, and you see that with even the inputs. You look at the steering, it's shockingly light. Incredibly light steering rack, and most sports cars would have a much lighter steering rack. Oh, this is definitely not the road for this car. Tight twisties. Now, I do like, at least with the transmission, when you're in manual mode, it will not automatically upshift for you. It will hold the gear that you tell it to hold. Let's get that traction control off. There we go. And speaking of the transmission, it's actually probably one of the strong suits of this car. It's an 8-speed automatic, and it's no ZF 8-speed, but it's quite smooth. It is reasonably quick. It's not as fast as, again, a BMW tuned ZF 8-speed, but it's fast enough. You don't feel frustrated. You don't feel like the IS500 where the transmission holds that car back so much. In this car, the engine is definitely holding it back, because it almost feels inappropriate. It feels wrong to be driving this car with the V6. The sounds it make, the sounds just aren't that great. They aren't that attractive or appealing. It feels like it needs that V8 grumble, that growl. Now, going back to the steering, it is incredibly light. It is not that accurate. In terms of the speed of the rack, because I like to talk about 4 things when it comes to steering, right? We have the feedback, we have the weighting, we have the speed, and we have the accuracy / slop. Now, the weight we've already determined is very light. The accuracy is below average for EPS. There's a little bit of slop here, which is not, it just shouldn't be there in a modern day vehicle like this. Oh my god, this thing is so heavy. There's absolutely no feedback through the steering wheel. And the speed of the rack is slower than I would want. But again, this car is going more for a GT rather than a sports car feel. Woo! I'm getting the tires squealing at such a low speed because this car is really just under-tired, if you will. It's not made for driving sporty at all. Now, the interior of this car, it is actually more spacious than the Camaro and the Mustang. You can use the rear seats more so in those vehicles. It's not nearly as cavernous and claustrophobic as the Camaro, but whereas the other two will sometimes, I mean, those are no, they're not really setting the bar in terms of what interior quality should be. They don't feel like this kind of 90s, trashy kind of hard vinyl plastic. They at least have some more premium soft touch plastics. And in this car, if I'm being honest, I don't really know what you get over the Mustang and the Camaro, other than a more GT experience. But it's not like the Mustang is that razor edge either. The Camaro definitely is. The Camaro is definitely a bit sporty, too sporty for some people, I would presume. You have a little bit more space in the back here, but the interior overall it's not a different class of vehicle. It's still a similar class. Brakes are quite frustrating actually, because the first little bit of travel, the first 15% is a little bit too slow, and it's not linear because after that 15%, it really ramps up. So you're either going too light on the brakes or too heavy, and it's taking me a good, 30, 60 minutes to get smooth and progressive with the brakes and have them behave in the way that I want them to behave. This engine is, again, not the strong suit of the vehicle. Naturally aspirated V6. It's lacking character. It doesn't sound that great. It doesn't love revving that much. It's not the smoothest. It's kind of just like a placeholder engine. You really want this car with a V8 if you're gonna get it. Now back to the inputs. The actual paddles for the manual shifting, they're comical. So these, essentially all you can see here is the extent of the paddles. When you go behind the wheel, it's no longer a paddle, it's a reverse-facing button to control things like the volume or other audio controls like next song or inputs and things like that. And that's just, it feels so silly. Give us a full paddle and get rid of those other buttons back there. The gas is almost too touchy at the early stages. The brakes are not touchy enough and then they become too touchy. The steering is super light. The inputs aren't all that well balanced. This car, it doesn't seem like they really cared about the driving experience at all whatsoever. It's fascinating to me that you can have such a soft and wallowy land yacht driving experience, yet have it pretty rough over the bumps. Now look, again, I don't like body shaming. I just think this car is a little bit too much cushion for the push and too chunky of a monkey. A car like this should not be weighing 4,000 pounds, man. And driving down these roads is comical and borderline scary rather than fun. I'm laughing at it, not with it right now, and I don't mean to bully it, but it's just such a bizarre driving experience. And the only rotation I'm getting is by really allowing that mass to just get thrown around rather than controlled rotation under braking. Look at how it just shimmies. My goodness. Now I'm only able to elicit a little bit of understeer from this car, no oversteer, and part of that is of course the engine. It's a bit underpowered for this chassis, for this weight. So using the throttle to get some oversteer is a little bit more challenging. Power oversteer is not gonna come easily in this vehicle. The CarPlay screen here is comically small. They have already a small screen, and then they want to show other things like, you know, climate, media button, temperature, etc. So they shrink from that small screen a smaller cutout for your CarPlay. It is minuscule. It's smaller than my phone. The amount of space and screen real estate that they've given to Apple CarPlay for my maps and such. What an amusing driving experience, man. You know, there might be something I'm missing from this car. So if you drive this car, if you love this vehicle, let me know in the comment below. What do you love about it? Because, again, I'm not trying to be a hater here. I'm just struggling to find anything. It's not very comfortable. The engine is not endearing or attractive in any way. The handling dynamics are complete garbage. The interior quality is subpar. The build quality is also lacking. Like, this car's spirit animal is a beluga whale, and you can't convince me otherwise. It's also pretty funny being on such a tight, twisty road. There we go. That traction control really kicked in and got me a little bit twitchy there when I was trying to correct it. I guess that's traction control sport rather than completely off. So I take back what I said. We were able to get some power oversteer on the really tight corners, and I believe that was first gear. If you are trying to shift, once you hit red line, it is quite slow, the transmission. But if you're able to shift before then, that's not too bad. Not too bad. And that, my friends, is the 2022 Dodge Challenger GT rear-wheel drive with the 3.6 liter naturally aspirated V6. Now for $35K, I feel you can get a lot more car when you're looking at either the Camaro or the Mustang in the equivalent trim at that price point. I even feel like, you know, if you're willing to go with the GR86/BRZ twins, you're gonna get a lot more car in terms of driving experience and enjoyment for cheaper than this. And that is it, my friends. Much love. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Woo-hoo!